The PlayStation brand is immensely important to gaming as a whole. It has an undeniable role in gaming history, as the success of the first PlayStation console stole thunder away from the dominance that Nintendo had established, while quickly carving a large space for the PlayStation itself, and it has maintained that importance since its debut. It is inarguably the most globally accessible console, and during the time in gaming when Nintendo hardware wasn't considered HD, the PlayStation was often the platform of choice for high-end games from developers in Japan in particular. As more news of the PlayStation 5 is upon us, let's take a look at the evolution of PlayStation hardware across time. We'll start with the first PlayStation, the flat, gray box that started it all for Sony. 2 controller ports and 2 memory card ports in the front, and when viewing it from the top, 3 buttons: power, reset, and open for the disc tray. Pressing the open button dislodges the case protecting the CD reader, the lid unfolding at a rather slow speed, though it's something that you get used to. It released in Japan in December of 1994 and for other regions across 1995. In 2000, Sony released the PS1, a smaller and wider version of the original PlayStation. But releasing slightly earlier than the PS1 is the PlayStation 2, the proper successor to the first PlayStation. The first PlayStation has an incredibly distinct and simple design, and the same applies to the PS2, a black box with the blue PS2 logo on the top face effortlessly standing out. Power and eject buttons are pushed to the right end of the front face of the console. The controller and memory card ports and disc tray don't stand out on the console's front face, they blend in, while the controller and memory card ports do not manage to be difficult to find, with numbers and text labeling in gray more apparent on closer inspection. The small PlayStation logo marks the center of the disc tray's front. The rigid design of the console across 4 of its 6 surfaces is something that no one would probably think to incorporate, but it's modern in a way that rather suits our times, which must also place the PS2 as a console ahead of its own time. It's a fun design altogether. The PS2 was followed up by the PlayStation 2 Slimline, significantly lighter and smaller than the original design. Before we would see the PlayStation 3, one of the consoles that defined high-definition gaming, we would be treated to Sony's entry into the handheld gaming market, the PlayStation Portable. The PSP was noteworthy in that with it, we see Sony was very interested in a future for gaming platforms in which that they were not just designed to play games, but were also meant to be media hubs. It was already the case that the PS2 could play DVDs and had online gameplay functionality, but the PSP could browse the internet, play music, browse photos, and watch movies. And for the PSP, Sony created its own disc medium, the UMD. The base PSP's design contains a wide screen in the center, trigger buttons on the upper shoulders of the platform, input buttons on the front, and a power slider and charge port on the bottom right of the console, with the UMD dock placed in the backside opening from the top of the console. While somewhat wide, it was like the early Game Boy platforms in that it could still fit into most pants pockets. Sony iterated upon the PSP several times, with the first model, the PSP 1000, being followed up by the 2000, the 3000, the PSP Go, and the PSP Street. The 2000 and 3000 were conventional iterative improvements on the PSP, but the PSP Go was interesting in that it ditches the UMD drive for more compactness. Instead, gamers must now download games from the PS Store and have an account to do so, effectively region locking the console. On the other hand, the PSP Street is a budget model with a matte finish, but it would also be the only model without Wi-Fi functionality. Not more than 2 years after the release of the PSP would we see Sony's PlayStation 3 releasing at a price point of $599 and its launch preceded by a widely mocked E3 conference if anybody remembers it. The PlayStation 3 was a big console for gaming, and it was also a big console, distinctly big and rather heavy, unexpected when one considers Sony's previous gaming platform offerings. Still noteworthy is its rounded box design, flat on 2 ends but designed such as to evoke an oval shape on its other faces. Following the initial PS3 design are the PlayStation 3 Slim and the PlayStation 3 Super Slim. In these 2 models, Sony stuck to the general design and shape concept of the first one established, but considerably trimmed down the height of the console, transforming the oval PS3 into something more bookish. It should be noted that the PS3 was the first Sony home console to forego memory cards for internal memory storage, whereas the PS3 and the PS3 Slim both feature a style of presentation wherein the disk drive is open and relegated to one side of the console's front, while covering the other half with plastic so as to complete the rounded design of the console. The PS3 Super Slim's design and ridges arguably evoke the PS2. Following the PlayStation 3 would be the PlayStation Vita, Sony's next and, so far as we know, last step into handheld gaming. It's very much similar to the PSP in terms of design, introducing 2 analog sticks instead of 1. Gone are the UMDs, instead games, if not downloaded, are accessed through game cards. Fewer buttons are placed on the front of the console, leading to less of a feeling of busyness that the PSP might have created, with the volume buttons being relegated to the top of the console along with the game card drive. The Vita's initial model was followed up with the PCH 2000 series, thinner, lighter, and with more battery life than the original. Also, Vita means life. The PlayStation 4 is Sony's latest entry into the console wars, a manifestation of its vision for gaming and for media engagement. When looking at the PlayStation 4, it seems that Sony always has an appreciation for a sense of theme in design, or an overarching sense of structure or shape, and with the PlayStation 4, we have a slanted rectangular design, with one side of the front facing towards the game player and the opposite end seeing the backside of the console protrude away. The PS4's design is also meant to recall something of a sandwich, with 2 large halves squashing a very small inner filling between the 2 halves. Sony also introduced to the PS4 line of consoles the Ps4 Pro, sleeker and more powerful than the PS4. The 2-part sandwich PS4 is now a 3-part with the Ps4 Pro. Sony regards the PS4 to be approaching the end of its life cycle, and naturally development work for the PS5 has long since been in progress. What can we expect for the PS5? Well, per Wired, an 8-core CPU based on AMD's Ryzen line 3rd generation and a graphics processing unit that is a variant of Radeon's Navi family, which will support ray tracing. The introduction of ray tracing to gaming is significant for graphics processing, allowing for even greater realism. The PS5 will also support 3D audio, a significant step forward for the experience of sound and a prospect that system architect Mark Cerny is excited about. Additionally, the built-in hard drive will be replaced with a solid-state drive. External SSDs are on offer for the PS4 and the Xbox One, but the PS5 will have them built in, promising faster loading times and faster rendering of in-game worlds. Expect less waiting and load screens than we are used to. One last nice touch is the promise of backwards compatibility with PlayStation 4 games. That being said, we have a lot to look forward to with the PS5, and with Sony's history in gaming, we also have a lot to look back on. Difficult of a question as this may be, but which is your favorite PlayStation home console? What do you think of the PSP and the PS Vita, and would you ever support Sony re-entering the handheld gaming market? What do you want from the PS5 besides ray tracing, 3D audio, super fast game loading and processing, and backwards compatibility with PS4 games? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always, thanks for watching. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.